Hey guys, WeBlade11 here, and today I'm going to be taking a look at Youkai Shadow. Let's get into it. Youkai Shadow is a deck that's recently risen in popularity, both in ladder and in tournament play, after the mini expansion. Compared to its cousin Burial Rite Shadow, Youkai Shadow offers more offensive options as well as reactive options in its brush followers. It mostly aims to close the game by taking advantage of Thoth's effect with spamming many smaller token followers through its various value engines, as well as closing out the game with large 1-stat storm followers from Shuten-Doji's effect in combination with Ginsetsu and Legendary Skeleton, two 1-stat followers that are both able to increase their attack stats and storm phase for large damage amounts. So from the top, I'm just going to be going into a breakdown of every card that's used in this deck and how it's used, what situations it's used, what kind of mana curve it's used in, and all around just trying to explain and break down the deck, how I see it, how I play the deck for you guys, so that hopefully you guys can learn a thing or two. Let's get into it. First card in this deck that I'll look at, Mino Crafty Reaper. Mino is kind of a more optional tech in the deck, which is nice for multiple reasons. The first one obviously is for more aggressive line of play during turn 1, filling out those mana curves with her flexibility of being one play point follower. Last Words Gain 1 Shadow is nice for two reasons. Last Words feeds into Thoth's effect. Gain 1 Shadow is also nice for fueling the multiple, somewhat medium-heavy demand for Necromancy shadows in this deck. And the Enhance is also nice in a pinch. Enhance 7, gain a bunch of extra stats, gain extra shadows. Sometimes you can use that to close the game, or if not, at worst she's a large stat stick. While it's not the best line to play usually, it can help in slow games. Now, taking a look at Demonic Procession, 1 play point bronze spell, Burial Rite. If you don't already know, Burial Rite means you put a follower from your hand into play, then immediately destroy it after removing all effects. So Procession's effect, ideally you would be wanting to use with any one statted follower in your deck. By one statted, I'm referring to one attack or one defense followers, hence one statted, which I'll be using as the non-clementia for the rest of this video. So if you're using Burial Rite on a follower that is one statted, you get 2 extra Shadow followers from this card's effect instead of 1 Shadowcraft follower. Obviously, you want to be using it optimally. There are times where either you're in a desperate situation and you need to dig through your deck, or you're trying to combine Lara's effect with a non-one-statted follower for greater effect in the coming turns. In this deck specifically, that would be Nightmare Devourer, maybe Milteo. It's just an all-round nice flexible card, helps you dig through that deck, helps with that consistency. Also gives you 2 shadows for 1 mana, always great. Gets you the followers you need, good card. 2 playpoint, 1/2 legendary card. At a glance, well, during the early turns and during the early to mid game, she's usually a 2 mana 1/2 draw 1 with a Last Words effect. But that effect and all the other Last Words effect followers in this deck, and well, I suppose the 1 amulet, all those Last Words effect feed into Thoth's secondary effect, her fanfare effect, which only activates after 10 Last Word cards have been destroyed. On Fanfare, she gives your leader the following effect. If you proc the 10 Last Words destroyed, your leader gives the effect to any cards that come into play, deal 2 damage to the enemy leader. Burn 2 for free. And that is part of the damage engine that this deck uses to help close out the game. Great card. So, Legendary Skeleton. In the early turns, it's a 2 mana 1/1 Hexproof Bane, Hexproof being that effects cannot target it, Bane meaning that you will always get a value trade out of this card, whether it be an equal value trade or greater value trade. And that 2 mana 1/1 Bane can take out a larger follower as long as they don't have the effect, cannot be destroyed by effects. Great card. During the later turns, you can play it for Necromancy 8, pay 8 shadows, evolve this follower. And as you may also note here, it cannot be manually evolved. The reason for that is looking at its evolve stats, it gains 4/4 in stats instead of the normal 2/2, which makes it great for surviving last trades, and when combined with Shuten-Doji's effect, also makes it a tough, beefy follower that hits face 5 damage. Bone Crane is just a solid 2 mana 2/2 follower, bronze follower. Since the beginning of the game itself, 2 mana 2/2 followers have always been relevant purely because of that stat line. 2 mana vanilla 2/2 with an upside, always great. Last Words, feed us into Thoth's effect. Skeleton into hand, great for fueling Demonic Procession. Procession, great for fueling other burial rites like Savouring Slash, Milteo lovers. In a pinch, you can use that skeleton with Shuten's effect for lethal or chip damage or whatever you want. I also sometimes play the skeleton as a 1-1 follower just to fill out my mana curve so they don't have any floating mana. Solid card, works well with the deck, no reason not to run it. Gremory Deathdealer. Great card. 2 mana wants reward with Invocation. Invocation only procs when you have more shadows than cards left in your deck, so it's a bit of an interesting card. Usually, if you're not spending any shadows, you'll be able to proc around turn 7, turn 8, depending. If you can proc its effect when this follow comes into play, so outside of Invocation, it also works on Reanimate. It also works when you play it normally as a pseudo fanfare effect. The effect is, once on every turn when you use Necromancy, gain X shadows and X play points, where X is equal to the Necromancy cost. You use it in combination with Shuten-Doji, Legendary Skeleton, and Nightmare Devourer in this deck. Refining play points is always great, especially late in the game where it enables you to play even more cards than you normally would have been able to. All around a solid, useful card. Can't go wrong with the 2 mana 1/3 vanilla ward that does more than be vanilla. Savouring Slash. Simple card, it's your 2 mana reactive spell on turn 2 going second. Oh, in general, I tend to save 2 mana 3 damage spells for going second because usually what the line of play is your opponent that's going first plays a 2 mana follower with any HP from 1 to 3 HP. You play your 2 mana reactive spell, both you have the same amount of tempo on board. The art is nice, it's a re-edition of Demon Eater from one of the older sets. Always nice to see those old characters in action. It also has a great secondary effect, Burial Rite, draw a card, gives you extra shadows, helps you cycle through your deck, helps you get rid of those weird fodder cards in your hand if you have them. Combos nicely with Lara's effect like every other Burial Rite I run it as a 3 of. There are games where you feel like having 3 of these in the deck will clog it up, but I find more often than not, especially when you're playing ladder against a variety of decks, it's better to have 3 copies than anything less, at least in my opinion. Sarcophagus Wraith. It's a 3 mana draw 2, heal 2, get 2 shadows. You can play it for Enhance 6, which summons an extra amulet, so basically these 2 amulets that it summons, 3 mana, it'll summon a Last Words amulet. When this amulet is destroyed, gain 2 shadows, heal for 2 damage, and draw 2 cards. And the amulet will self-destruct when any one of your allied followers are destroyed. So the secondary amulet that Sarcophagus summons at 6 mana is a bit of the same effect. It destroys itself when an allied follower is destroyed, and it summons a Lich and a Zombie, so a 2 mana 2/2 and a 4 mana 4/4 vanilla. You might think that Enhance 6 is a bit of steep cost, but really, it's not the play point cost that's the issue, it's having enough board space. More often than not, when playing Enhance 6, I'll find that I don't have enough board space for all the extra amulets that it spawns, but even then, a 3 mana 1/2 that evolves itself is pretty okay, especially when combined with Shuten's effect. It's a free 3/4 self-evolve that storms face. If you have the board space, it summons the extra amulets. If you don't have the board space, chances are you're in a good position anyway. All around a solid card, 3 mana 1/2 that draws 2 cards is always good. Anything better is, well, better. Great. Amazing. Let's move on. Lara Soul Taker. So basically, on fanfare, after a follower has been destroyed, remember that part, because there's so many times where I have tried to proc effect without actually destroying any one of my allied followers first. When an allied follower is destroyed, or when any allied follower is destroyed on that turn, you play a Lara. She refunds you that follower with 0 PP into your hand. Take note, this followers destroyed effect, or the criteria for followers destroyed, also applies to followers destroyed using Burial Rite effects. So the line of play is use Lara with Demonic Procession, use Lara with Savouring Slash, and you can refund the follower they Burial Rited with Lara's Fanfare. Great card. Of course, it does come at a cost, which is the follower that you bring back into your hand is destroyed at the end of the turn, but that only applies when that follower is played onto board. So what most people do is they take the tokens spawned from Lara's effect and save it for later turns. Now usually I've used Lara's effect mostly with Nightmare Devourer or Ginsetsu. The most common optimal play is on turn 5 you Demonic Procession a Ginsetsu into playing Lara, but you hold the Ginsetsu for later turns. So ideally you want to save the Ginsetsu for a turn after you've played Shuten-Doji, because then what happens is use the token spawned from Ginsetsu herself to clear out any wards that might be in your way of hitting face, and then you hit face. Even if you don't hit face, the tokens that are spawned from Ginsetsu's effect are great. as they give you extra shadows from the bodies. They add to the last words counter for Thoth's effect. And well, there are key moments where you'll use Lara with some other follower, Nightmare Devourer, as I already said. Just make sure that you isolate the follower that you want to bring back with Lara into your hand, because there are a lot of times where I've misplayed by crashing, say, one of the Ginsetsu boards or crashing one of my smaller followers and play Lara only to get back a 0 mana 1/1 skeleton. Don't do that. Alright, Shuten-Doji, 4 mana, 1/4 with Bane. Great card, great stat line, great vanilla traits for trading, great fanfare effect, Necromancy 8, recover 1 evo point. Works with Gremory's effect. Commonly, I'll play this going second and then evolving it on turn 4. Going first is a bit trickier. You'll usually either float 1 play point or you'll have to wait till turn 6 to play it. But one of the nice things about the Lovers is that the Lovers can reanimate Shuten-Doji on turn 5 and then you're able to evolve Shuten-Doji then. Although having said that, that's a bit of a gamble, it's down to RNG, but if you can pull that roll off, it's a very powerful play on turn 5. The other thing I should mention is his Evolver effect. Basically, give any 1 stat follower Storm for the first time on each of your turns, once per turn. You combine it with Ginsetsu, you combine it with Legendary Skeleton. Both of those followers give themselves higher attack stats. Sarcophagus Wraith sometimes. The reason I mentioned Sarcophagus Wraith is because of its self-evolution effect for 6 mana. I've used that to hit face on occasion. One of the key places of your deck, I do run it at 2 copies in this build because I find you have so much deck cycle that it's not too terrible. The Necromancy Evolution recovery means you'll always be able to get its evolve effect off no matter what. It's just a matter of having the shadows to actually activate that effect in the first place. Good card, solid card, its effect wins you games. Nightmare Devourer, 5 mana 3/3 rush, clones itself with Necromancy. So this card is great for multiple reasons. Fanfare, Necromancy 4, repeat for as many board spaces as you have left. And the Necromancy effect is, of course, to spawn a copy of itself. A solid board flood card. I've won games from simply flooding my board and the opponent not being able to respond. Even if some of the tokens do get destroyed, they have the last words effect, which is great for activating Thoth's effect, heal 2 or gain 2 shadows. So you spawn 5 of them, on average you'll get about 50-50. It's not an RNG effect that totally feels like it throws the game out of your own control. There will be times where you feel like you wanted one effect over the other, but all in all, it's not irrelevant, but not game-breaking either. Milteo, the Lovers. So Milteo is a great card in her own Burial Rite deck due to a Burial Rite 2 effect. Yeah, she's still a very solid card, even if you're not focused on the Burial Rite aspect of her fanfare. Still solid for board flood, last words follower, great for that Thoth effect, last words draw 2, great for maintaining hand. Even though she is a draw 2, you should note that because of her Burial Rite 2 effect, most of the time you're not going to be gaining any extra cards. However, you're still going to be able to cycle through your deck, so it's always a plus in my book. You're also always going to get that reanimate effect, which is great for adding extra followers to board, extra shadows. Reanimating, as I said before, you can reanimate anything from 5 cost to 1 cost to 6 cost. There aren't any 6 cost followers in this deck, however, so bit of a bum if you roll that one. As I mentioned before, you can try and gamble it with the Shuten-Doji. Honestly, her reanimates aren't as great in this deck, but they're still very solid. It's still a very solid card. She also has a very nice turn 9 effect, turn 9 or post turn 9 effect. So for 9 mana, self-evolve, do not perform Burial Rite. And because of the power of her evolve effect, she cannot be evolved using evolution points. So, evolve effect, destroy 6 random other followers. This includes followers on your own board and on the enemy's board. Turn 9, you're usually not going to be playing followers on your own board, you're not usually going to have followers on your own board. Worst comes to worst, you crash your own followers into the enemy's followers before proccing the destroy 6 effect. And the other secondary effect is nuke your opponent's HP to 6. So 20 HP, down to 6. 10 HP, down to 6. Great card, great turn 9 card. It is an OTK that's possible with Milteo as long as you have Thoth's effect active and you have, say, a 0-costed Nightmare Devourer or Ginsetsu in hand. If you can manage to proc Milteo's effect with at least 3 cards on your side of the board with Thoth's effect active, that's an OTK. So the ordering to that is, first it checks the opponent's HP. As long as they don't have damage mitigation, you should be able to drop their HP to 6. After that happens, she'll destroy everything on board simultaneously. And after that happens, after their HP is dropped to 6, the Thoth Last Words effect will proc on every follower that got destroyed. Which means after their HP drops to 6, you can deal 2 damage 3 times as long as you had 3 followers that were destroyed on your side of the board. Easy win, easy life. Good OTK to keep in mind. Guilt, Existential Blader. Why does it exist? To be a soul con. Soul conversion. As you can see, it's an 8 mana 6/8 rush follower. Very rarely you'll play it for the full cost. One example that comes to mind is after using a Necromancy effect, you have 1 board spot left open, and honestly, it's not that bad of a card as long as you played something else that turn, because it is a big ball of stats. But apart from that, most of the time, 99% of the time, you're going to be using him for his Accelerate effect, which is destroy an allied follower and draw 2 cards. Great for when you need the board space, great for activating your own Last Words effects, draw 2 cards, great for cycling through your deck. Sometimes being an 8 mana follower with a conditional Accelerate will stuff you up, especially turn 8 onwards. It's just one of the things you have to keep in mind when playing this deck. And finally, the greatest card in this deck, Ginsetsu, Great Fox. It's cute. Yeah, so Ginsetsu has multiple uses. 2 mana, Accelerate, summon a 1/3 ward with Rush and Last Words. The Last Words is relevant unless you have Ginsetsu on board, I'll get to that later. Accelerate 5, summon 3 of those 2 mana 1/3 wards with Rush and Last Words. Last Words is great because even if the Last Words effect doesn't actually do anything with the Ginsetsu on board, it still feeds into the Thoth effect for later on in the game. When you do have a Ginsetsu on board, however, Last Words give 2/0 to any and all Ginsetsu on board, especially when that Ginsetsu has Storm. There's your finisher right there. Other thing to note is when you play Ginsetsu and you have Thoth's effect on all the tokens and Ginsetsu herself, it's a pretty powerful finisher, especially if you're able to crash through all the wards. And when Ginsetsu herself is played, whether it be for 9 mana or if she was spawned for 0 mana with the Lara effect, she'll summon 4 of these one-tailed foxes. And when each of these foxes come into play, she'll give all of them 1/0 and drain, making them into 2 mana, 2/3 wards with Rush and Drain, which is great for healing. Also great for breaking down wards. Great defensive utility, great offensive action when combined with Shuten-Doji's effect. 1/9 stat line makes it very hard to kill outside of hard removal. All around a very solid, flexible card that helps the deck tick, even if she doesn't have a big flashy effect of her own. And so that's Last Words Shadow in a nutshell. One notable exclusion from this list is Sacristan. Not that he's a bad card post nerf, sometimes his amulet takes up board space, more often than not he's a dead draw post turn 2, post turn 3. There is an argument for using him in the deck, I just basically took him out for testing purposes, quite honestly. He's not a bad card, but even after taking him out of the deck, I haven't particularly missed him. So there's a breakdown of Last Words Shadow for all you guys. If you have any questions, any criticisms, or if you just want to get to know me better, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to my channel. I post Shadowverse content every few days. And yeah, peace out. This is Blueblade11, signing out.